Hello everyone and good day. I'm Aimil Groni Orapa and I am the first reporter of Group 11 which has the topic of environmental protection and negative externalities. So, in this topic, we are going to talk about the economics of pollution, command and control regulation, market-oriented environmental tools, the benefits of and cost of US environmental issue, the international issue, and the trade-off between economic output and environmental loss. So many people are always concerned about our environmental issues since the publishing of the famous tragedy of the Commons paper that did a paper on which will be grading hopefully part of the time in Germany. The economics of pollution. So the paper came out in 1967 to 1970s. We're getting a various number of anti-pollution policies and it's made general good progress against a lot of things. We've cleaned up the waterways for the most part and the air too. What's spewing out of factories has been cleaned but we haven't. There's two factors that have happened since then. There's still high levels of pollution of water, air, and water pollution because of the CO2 emissions from automobiles and other things. We haven't really solved that, and the runoff of high use of fertilizer in agriculture into rivers, streams, lakes, which causes those blooms of red algae and things that you hear about. Because I think it depletes the oxygen and make it easier for the algae to breathe but not so much for the fish. So there's two thing that we talk about, and externalities are things that our third party either benefits or suffers from something. And externalities can be negative or positive. Negative externality, a situation where a third party outside the transaction suffers from the transaction by others. Example of this is air pollution from industrial activities. So when a factory emits pollutants into the air, surrounding communities may suffer health issues and decrease air quality without compensation. The health costs incurred by residents represent a negative externality, not reflected in the factory's production costs, highlighting the social and environmental impact of such activities. That is the negative externality. And the positive externalities is a situation where a third party outside the transaction benefits from a market transaction. So an example of this is our education. When individuals invest in education, not only do they benefit by gaining knowledge and skills, but society as a whole benefits from a more informed and productive workforce, leading to overall economic and social development. And another example of this is a vaccination. When someone gets vaccinated, not only do they protect themselves from the disease, but they also contribute to overall community by reducing the spread of illness. This benefits others who may not have been vaccinated, creating a positive impact beyond the individual's direct actions. So that is the positive externalities. Pollution as a negative externalities. So we all know that pollution is one of the example of negative externality, just like I said an example earlier. So it is because negative externality or an additional external cost by third parties outside the production unit of people that are polluting would be an agricultural industry and other social costs. There could be health longevity of all this kind of things. So let's take a look in this graph as a supply shift. So taking social cost into an account If the firm takes only its own production cost into account, then a supply curve will be as private. And then it's and the equilibrium will record it easy row, so a certain amount of output and a certain price accounting for the additional external cost of $100 for every unit. The firm supply curve will be the social supply curve, and the new equilibrium will be at E1, which is 40,000 units and a price of $700. Because, as you know, there might be components in refrigerators that you just can't throw it into a landfill and they have to be recycled or whatever. So it could be that kind of thing. Next, we have market failure. So, market failure is when the market on its own does not allocate resources efficiently in a way that balances social costs and benefits. Externalities are one of the example of a market failure. So that's it. A market failure is when a market on its own does not basically allocate resources. This is an efficient way that to balance social costs and benefits. Their firms are required to pay the social cost of pollution. They would create less pollution but produce less of the product and therefore charge a higher price, and that flies against this. The face of the free market and the practice of our free market, which is like people react against it. So one of the things that governments can do instead of going with this kind of solution is command and control regulation. They create this regulation. This is one type that laws of it asbestos related limit the pollution that one can encounter firms and required to increase the cost of putting as scrubbers for their smokestacks and account for the social cost of pollutions and in deciding therefore how much to produce. Difficulties with command and control environmental regulation. So we have three difficulties of command and control regulation. First, we have regulation offers no incentive to improve the quality of the environmental beyond the standards set by particular law. No incentive to do better. So when regulations specify a minimum environmental standard, there's often an incentive for business to go above and beyond that level. If the law sets a baseline, companies might not feel motivated to make extra efforts to enhance environmental quality because they're already meeting the legal requirements. Second, we have inflexible. Requires the same standard for all polluters and often the same pollution control technology as well. So this refers to a rigid approach in environmental regulations, whence all polluters are held to the same standards and often required to use identical pollution control technology, regardless of individual circumstances or differences in pollution levels. Third, we have subject to compromises and political process. It is full of fine print, loopholes, and exemption. So, this refers to a political process or documents that is vulnerable to manipulation, contains indicate details, and includes ways to exploit or avoid certain rules and conditions. So that is the three difficulties of command and control regulation in our community. So that's all my part to discuss, and thank you for listening, and let's proceed to the next reporter.